My wolf went insane after I watched my parents take their own lives right before my eyes. My childhood protector, Alexander, had to hold me every night. The only thing that can soothe my wolf is Alexander's alpha scent. Later, Sophie, the beta he cherished, took her own life, leaping from a bridge into the sea. Everyone thought I had pushed Sophie into the sea, so that I could have Alexander all to myself. The warmth Alexander once had for me was gone, replaced by an endless, desolate disappointment. He kept whispering, "Why did it have to be this way?" But when a vampire's lethal curse came for me, he still drained his alpha strength to take the fatal blow. As he lay dying, he used his last ounce of strength to wipe a tear from my cheek. "It was my fault I spoiled you, Elena. I never should have brought you into my pack." Alexander's parents, the former Alpha and Luna, called me a cursed Omega. They said I was a calamity, that I was the one who destroyed their proud, noble Alpha son. Consumed by regret, I went to the altar of the moon goddess and offered my soul. I begged for a second chance, even if it cost me my soul's eternal peace. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day Alexander discovered my sick obsession with him, my desperate need to claim him as my mate. This time, I would crush every delusional fantasy. My only wish was for him to find his true mate and live a long, powerful, peaceful life. As for me, my life was a price I was willing to pay. His voice was a shocked whisper. "I always thought you were so innocent. How could you harbor these kinds of feelings for me?" The familiar voice echoed in my ears. Before consciousness fully returned, I felt my heart hammering under the weight of his complex alpha scent. I stared, stunned, at the living, breathing, powerful alpha before me. Tears instantly welled in my eyes. "Say something," he sighed, tossing a shirt heavy with his scent over to me, covering the damning evidence. A dark flush crept up his neck, a sign of shock and confusion. At his feet lay a wooden box, its contents spilled across the floor, my secret hoard of items, all soaked in his scent. It was undeniable. My feelings for him went far beyond the bond we shared as packmates. My wolf was sick with the need to possess him. But right now, I didn't feel a single drop of shame for being discovered. Instead, a wave of relief so powerful washed over me that I burst into uncontrollable sobs. My endless nights of praying to the moon goddess had finally been answered. I was reborn, sent back to the very moment Alexander discovered my dark obsession with him. I trembled with the sheer joy of this new beginning, tears streaming down my face. Alexander noticed something was off. He must have thought his serious tone had terrified me. He softened his voice, his gaze complex as he pointed at the box. "Listen to me, Elena. Burn it." His voice was low, laced with a soft, weary emotion. "Just get rid of it and we can pretend this never happened." Last time he said those words, the wolf inside me had snapped. I'd grabbed him by the collar and kissed him. He'd stared at me, utterly shocked, before recoiling as if burned. From that day on, he refused to be in the same room with me. If he saw me in the manor, he avoided me like the plague. That one forbidden kiss had shattered my last restraint, fueling my obsession. It also deepened my hatred for Sophie, the she-wolf who had captured his attention, and that led to all the tragedies that followed. So this time, I wiped my tears away with the back of my hand. I scrambled to gather the scattered items, placed them back in the box, and carried it toward the fire pit in the backyard. "Okay. I'll burn it." When I was 17, my pack was destroyed overnight. In his despair, my father drove us, my mother and I, up a winding mountain road. The wind howled that day, and I remember my father's bloodshot eyes as he looked at me. "Elena, don't blame us." I closed my eyes, ready for the car to plunge off the cliff. But at the last second, he shoved a moon goddess charm into my hand. Then he wrenched the steering wheel, throwing me clear of the vehicle. The next moment, the car, with my parents inside, plummeted into the ravine and erupted in a ball of fire. I sat on the edge of the cliff for what felt like an eternity, until Alexander found me. He was only 5 years my senior, but he already carried himself with the unshakable presence of a future Alpha. He handled the arrangements, fending off the vultures circling to claim my father's debts. After the funeral, I moved into Alexander's home. But every night, nightmares consumed me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that all-consuming fire. Alexander tried everything. He'd take me on walks under the full moon. He would wrap me in his alpha scent, staying by my side from dusk till dawn. Then one stormy night, my control finally shattered, and my wolf went feral. I nearly tore my own throat out with my claws. Alexander pinned me down, using his own body as a shield, letting my teeth and claws rake bloody marks across his arms, but he never let go. That night, cocooned in his alpha scent, I cried myself to exhaustion and finally found a peaceful sleep. At 17, at 18, how could I resist a powerful, gentle alpha who was so fiercely protective? I began to collect anything that held his scent obsessively. His shirts, his watch, even a paper bag he'd tossed aside. Anything of his was enough to make my heart race and my wolf howl. I prayed to grow up faster, just so I could finally confess. But before I had the chance, the beta he loved, Sophie, killed herself by jumping into the ocean. Everyone thought her death was my fault. Alexander's eyes turned to ice. He looked at me with a gaze that held none of its former warmth, only endless disappointment and distance. Yet when a vampire's lethal curse came for me, he still shielded me with his body without a second's hesitation. Alexander was perfect in every way. It's just that his feelings for me seemed to be nothing more than an alpha's instinct to protect a member of his pack. Mine was an omega's primal craving for her mate. In my past life, when Alexander's mother heard he had died, she collapsed on the spot. His father pointed a shaking finger at me and roared, "Elena, you are a calamity sent by the moon goddess. Will you not be satisfied until everyone who loves you is dead?" I remembered Alexander's last words. "I spoiled you. If only I had never brought you into my territory." He regretted it. And so did I. I clutched the moon goddess charm to my chest. They say if your prayer is sincere enough, the goddess will answer. I wanted to pray that in the next life, he would never meet me. But perhaps I truly was cursed to walk alone forever. I knelt before her statue for countless days and nights, until my energy was utterly depleted, and the charm in my palm began to glow faintly. A voice, ancient and ethereal, echoed in my mind. "What is done cannot be undone, but it can be relived. You are the calamity woven into his fate. If you do not resolve it, all your efforts will be in vain. Whether you repeat the tragedy or forge a new path, the choice is yours." When I woke, the cracked charm in my palm was proof that it was no dream. This life, I won't make the same mistakes. No matter the cost, I will ensure my alpha has a life of peace and happiness. The next day, on the way to the pack house, neither of us mentioned what had happened. The silence in the car was strange, thick with unspoken things. His scent was a confused, suppressed mix. It wasn't until we got out of the car that Alexander broke the silence. "Elena," he sighed. "You attacked Sophie the other day. Scratched her face. Go and apologize to her, will you?" His tone held no blame, only a deep exhaustion. He clearly expected me to have another meltdown. But I just lowered my head obediently. "Okay." Alexander shot me a surprised look, but in the end he didn't say anything else. Once we were inside, I kept my promise and went to find Sophie to apologize. I finally found her in the lounge with Alexander. Amid the aroma of fresh coffee, the beta she-wolf and the powerful alpha were gazing at each other. Their scents wove together, creating an intimate, fragrant bubble around them. The next second, she caught sight of me out of the corner of her eye. Her smile vanished, and she quickly tried to hide her still swollen cheek with her hair. Alexander instinctively moved to shield her with his body. "What are you doing here?" His voice was quiet, with a nervous edge I couldn't miss. He'd obviously forgotten, he had just ordered me to come apologize. I couldn't really blame my alpha for being on edge. I was a lunatic. My feelings for Alexander were an omega's most primal, possessive need for a mate. He was handsome, powerful, gentle, and kind. Countless omegas and betas wanted him, and I had used my omega instincts to drive every single one of them away. I had mistaken his silence for permission, his tolerance for affection. I became more and more convinced that he had feelings for me too. It was just like my past life. When a she-wolf trying to seduce him spiked his wine with charm root, I gave myself to him to save him. He clearly didn't want to make mistakes in that state, and kept avoiding my gaze. But he couldn't stop the low growls escaping his throat as he caught my scent, pulling me down with him. We spent a passionate night together. I thought that after that, he would finally see me as his mate. But I'd ignored the fact that it was nothing more than an alpha's uncontrollable biological response. If he hadn't been drugged, he wouldn't have given me a second glance. Only Sophie was special to him. Even 10 years after her death, Alexander had never forgiven me. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat, and took a deep breath. I faced Sophie and bowed deeply, a perfect 90 degrees. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have hit you, and I never should have humiliated you in public like that. Can you forgive me? Sophie glanced nervously at Alexander. When he didn't object, she answered in a low voice. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I forgive you. I straightened up and met Alexander's gaze. In his deep eyes, I saw a storm of complicated emotions I couldn't understand. In my past life, there was another reason I hated Sophie. I'd seen her more than once getting close to Alexander's biggest rival, another alpha named Connor. Connor was a vicious wolf who loved nothing more than making trouble for Alexander. I was convinced Sophie was a pawn sent to manipulate Alexander, which was why I was so hostile towards her. This time, no matter what the truth was, I had to find out. I had to get these two lovers, who missed their chance in the last life, back on the right track. So I started sticking to Sophie, telling her how guilty I felt, and that I wanted to be friends. At first, she was wary of me. But when she saw I genuinely meant no harm, she slowly let her guard down. I tried to probe gently. So what do you think of Alpha Alexander? Sophie's ears turned bright red. Alpha Alexander, he's so strong, but so gentle. He never gets angry with other wolves. I think he's very charming. Just as I thought. The feeling was mutual. And Sophie was truly a great match for him. She came from a simple background, but worked incredibly hard. She was the top student at the Werewolf Academy, ambitious and strong-willed. And my alpha was handsome and powerful, heir to his family's territory and fortune, young and successful. Anyone would call them a perfect match. Even though I already knew this was how it was supposed to be, my heart ached with a bitter jealousy. That evening, for the first time in a long while, Alexander knocked on my bedroom door. He didn't dare come in. The last time he'd barged in unannounced was when he found all my disturbing secrets. I spoke first. I'm just looking at some reports for the branch office. Nothing else. Since my rebirth, I could feel Alexander purposefully keeping his distance. Even without the kiss, he couldn't accept that the little sister he'd raised himself harbored a mate's desire for him. And me. Even without the kiss, I still couldn't let him go. He cleared his throat, a little awkwardly. Why haven't you been riding home with me from the pack house lately? I was surprised. I didn't expect him to ask about that. Because I need to get used to a life without you. I nervously closed the tab with the application forms for packs in Europe, and made up an excuse. I'm getting along really well with Sophie. We made plans to leave work together so we can chat. The lie felt hollow on my tongue. Alexander stared at me, his alpha gaze making my scalp tingle. I lifted my chin and challenged him. Am I getting in your way? He frowned and reached out, his fingers gently brushing my forehead. What are you thinking? It's nothing like that. Then he ran a hand through his hair, looking a bit frustrated. Forget it. It's probably good for you to make more friends. That day, I left work with Sophie as usual. She had opened up to me a lot, and I was determined to find out the real reason why she had jumped into the sea in our past life. Everyone thought I pushed her. Even Alexander believed it. After all, I had a history. But I didn't do it. I never even touched a shred of her clothing. She had just cried and jumped on her own. I thought maybe something had happened with Sophie's family that made her suicidal. Sophie, if you're in any trouble, you have to tell me. I'll help you. Sophie froze for a second. Then her eyes reddened. She was in trouble. She was just about to speak. Suddenly, a group of rogues emerged from the shadows of the parking garage. They looked dangerous, and they were carrying weapons. I knew some self-defense from when I was younger, and my werewolf instincts allowed me to hold my own for a bit. But Sophie was not doing well. Just as a club was about to swing down on her, I didn't think twice. I threw myself in front of her. A sharp pain exploded in the back of my head, and my world went black. When I woke up, the back of my head and my back were throbbing with a burning pain. I was covered in dirt, but the scene in front of me was too shocking to process. Sophie was lying nearby, her clothes torn, her eyes empty and vacant. Could you do this? His eyes were red with anguish, his alpha presence chaotic and overwhelming from his loss of control, making it hard to breathe. I stared at him, confused, before it slowly dawned on me. He had it all wrong. He thought I did this to her. Alex, no, it wasn't me. Alexander swept Sophie up into his arms. He didn't even look at me again, just growled. Delete what's on your phone. Wait for me at the manor. His voice was low, suppressing a volcano of emotion. I watched his retreating back, my vision blurring with tears. It really wasn't me. Finally, all my strength drained away, and the world faded to black again. I dreamed of my past life, of Alexander looking at me with that same cold fury after Sophie's fall. I was at the police station for questioning. That was the first time Alexander ever released his true, hostile alpha command on me. That invisible pressure shattered my heart more than any slap ever could. How could you do something like this? I'm so disappointed in you. I wish I had never brought you into our pack. His eyes held a chilling calm that was born from the deepest grief. I couldn't blame him. After all, on the rooftop that day it was just me and Sophie. No one would believe that a promising beta with a bright future would just fall into the ocean for no reason. But even though Alexander didn't believe me, he still got me the best lawyer. There were no cameras installed by the seaside, no direct evidence that I had pushed Sophie. They couldn't find my fingerprints on her. The Pact Council even considered the possibility that I had used dark magic to compel her to jump. In the end, her death was ruled an accident. Alexander paid a huge sum of money to Sophie's mother, but she still came to our pack house every day to cause a scene. So after it was all over in my past life, Alexander disbanded the pack. He donated our entire fortune to charity to atone for what he believed was my sin. Then he moved with me back to the old family estate in the north. I had ruined his life. Without me, he would have had a brilliant future. No matter what anyone else thought to Alexander, the Omega he brought home had killed the woman he loved. From that day on, nothing could ever be the same. I jolted awake, staring up at the familiar bedroom ceiling. Thank Moon Goddess, I was reborn. It was a chance to start everything over. Alexander was sitting by my bed, looking exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes. When he saw I was awake, a flicker of light returned to his eyes. Then he pulled me into a hug, holding me tightly, so tightly. It turned out Sophie had woken up before I did. She told him everything that had happened. That I was only knocked out because I was trying to save her. The men who attacked us took pictures of her and then ran off. Alexander held me, his body trembling slightly. He buried his face in the crook of my neck, his voice hoarse and full of regret. I'm so sorry, Elena. I'm so sorry. I was wrong about you. I didn't protect you, and then I accused you without even knowing the truth. He was shaking, and the warmth of his alpha scent wrapped around me, making my own eyes burn. All the pain and frustration of the past few days burst out of me at once. I buried my face in his expensive shirt, smearing tears and snot all over it. Alex, it's all my fault. I cried, gasping for breath. If I hadn't been so awful in the past, you would have had a reason to believe me. I shook my head desperately, wanting him to believe me. I was so wrong. I'll never cling to you again. I'll never make things hard for you. I won't wish for you to be my mate anymore. I'll be good. I'll be your pack sister. We'll always be family. I promise. I felt Alexander's body go rigid for a second. Then his hand started gently patting my back. We stayed like that, holding each other for a long, long time. It felt like all the walls between us had finally crumbled away. Alexander picked up the bowl of soup from the nightstand and began to feed me, one spoonful at a time. Eat something first. He tucked my hair behind my ear and grabbed his jacket. I'm going out to buy you those moon-shaped cakes you love, he said, his gaze as soft and deep as a forest pool. When I get back, I have something important I want to tell you. I watched him go. a strange feeling washing over me. Something about him seemed different, like he'd made a very important decision. But I waited for a long time, and my alpha didn't come back. Instead, I got a text message. It was from Sophie. "Elena, please, I'm begging you. Meet me at the bridge. You have to come alone. Please." I bolted out the door, my heart pounding. Why? Why was this still happening? The moon goddess's words echoed in my head. What has happened cannot be undone. Did that mean I couldn't change anything? Then what was the point of being reborn? But this message, it was different from the one she sent last time. In the last life, her text was a taunt. She lied and said she and Alexander were having a secret meeting. But this time was different. I felt like the truth was finally within my reach. On the bridge, the sea wind howled. Sophie stood on the other side of the railing, her face streaked with tears, just like last time. "Sophie, what the hell are you doing? Did she really have to throw herself into this ocean?" Sophie looked at me and dropped to her knees on the narrow ledge. "Elena, I'm trapped. The rogues who attacked us were sent by Alpha Connor. He used blood magic to bind me. I'm as good as dead." My blood ran cold. "If you knew that, why didn't you go to the pack enforcers? You're the victim, you did nothing wrong." Sophie screamed, already on the verge of a complete breakdown. "It's useless, Elena." I fought back, but it was useless. They're threatening my mother and my pack. Connor's pack is too powerful, we can't fight him. He's a monster. He's been playing with all of us. He wants to destroy Alexander, so he's starting with you. I'm so sorry. You and Alpha Alexander were so good to me. Don't come any closer. As long as you don't touch me, they won't find your fingerprints or scent on me. Alexander cares about you so much. He'll find a way to protect you. But if I don't do what Connor says, my pack will be destroyed. If I die, maybe it will be a big enough scandal to expose him. All I ask is that after I'm gone, you'll look after my family for the sake of our short friendship." I lunged forward, jumping after her the instant she fell, reaching for her. A raw, desperate scream tore from my throat, nearly swallowed by the wind. "Do you have any idea what will happen to Alex if you die? He'll be in pain for the rest of his life. I wouldn't let that tragedy happen again." I gave it my all and pulled Sophie up with all my strength, even dislocating both my wrists in the process. The next second, the moon goddess amulet around my neck slipped free, hitting the ground with a faint clink. A flash of light erupted, shattering it into a dozen pieces. She was saved. This time it was different. As I watched the fragments hang in the air, it all clicked. If I were the curse in Alexander's fate, then without me, he could finally be happy, couldn't he? So that was it. I finally understood. This was the meaning of the moon goddess. From the edge of the bridge, Sophie watched in horror as I fell, reaching for me, frantic to help. But I just smiled. "So," I whispered, "if I just disappear, everything will be all right, won't it?" My wolf didn't howl. It was as calm as I was, accepting our fate. I climbed over the railing, and let myself fall into the abyss. "My Alex, this time, you have to be happy." Alexander's POV. Across the street, buying Elena's favorite cakes, Alexander's heart seized. It was a sharp, tearing agony that ripped through the core of his wolf. A pain from the deepest part of his soul. The box fell from his hands, the cakes scattering on the pavement. He didn't bother to pick them up. He snapped his head up, his eyes fixed on the bridge. His alpha instincts were screaming, a desperate, unprecedented alarm. Alexander's mind screamed at him, but his body had already moved. His alpha instinct was a beast off its leash, dragging him toward the bridge. He saw Sophie. She was collapsed at the edge of the bridge, soaking wet, screaming Elena's name. Why was she screaming Elena's name? An icy fist closed around Alexander's heart. He shoved savagely through the crowd and rushed to the railing. There was nothing below, just the black, angry sea. His Omega. The girl he'd brought home. She was gone. No. She was supposed to be at home, waiting for him to bring back cupcakes from her favorite bakery, her favorite treat. She wasn't supposed to be swallowed by this damned sea. Sophie told him everything. Through her tears, she said Elena had saved her. When I jumped, she fought with all her strength to pull me up. But she fell instead. She said if I died, you'd miss me for the rest of your life. She didn't want you to be that sad. The air was punched from Alexander's lungs. Every word was another twist of the knife in his gut. He finally realized it wasn't fate, or some curse. It was him. He was the coward who had pushed Elena into the abyss himself. He remembered that day clearly, when he'd told her to burn those things. She had stood alone in the backyard, burning them, wiping away her tears. His heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice, making it impossible to breathe. He'd coldly ordered a pack attendant to take her away. Then, against his will, he'd walked toward the pile of ash. A photograph inside hadn't fully burned. He stamped out the embers. It was a photo of them from her coming-of-age ceremony. The girl's eyes were as bright as stars, and the way she looked at him was so gentle, yet so determined. On the back, in small, neat handwriting, "Would my alpha hate me if he knew I loved him?" In that moment, nothing else mattered. He shouldn't have been shocked by her feelings. He never should have made her feel ashamed. He didn't have the right. No matter what mistakes Elena had made in this world, his own sins ran deeper. He was just too scared to take that step. He was afraid that one step would make him lose everything. So he used Sophie, like the worst kind of bastard, naively thinking he could make Elena give up. But the moment she woke from her coma, crying that she'd been wrong, all he wanted to say was that he was the one in the wrong. He was the bastard, the coward. He'd let Elena bear the weight of their shared sin, all alone. Alexander finally understood. He was going to go back and tell her. To hell with the rules, to hell with the pack. He just wanted her. But that single moment of hesitation had cost him his Omega forever. The search and rescue team scoured the sea for 3 days and 3 nights. They found nothing. Alexander made Connor and his pack pay the price in the bloodiest way possible. He became a walking corpse, the light in his eyes extinguished and his alpha presence diminished to nothing. He spent his days in Elena's room, the only place in the world that still held her scent. Time lost all meaning. His life had ended the day his little Omega fell into that dark sea. Elena's POV. In another wing of the manor, Alexander's parents were at their wits' end. None of the doctors can help. It's like he's lost his soul. Maybe the moon goddess's sanctuary can do something. I never thought I'd wake up again. I was in a dim, rented room. On the table was a job offer letter. The name on it was Elena. I was reborn in the body of an Omega orphan who happened to share my name. My new body didn't look much like my old one. She was a rogue, with no parents, who had fought her way up from the slums. Her life was a blank slate. It felt like a gift from the moon goddess herself. This city was a world away from the one I used. In a twisted way, everything I had prayed for had come true. My sacrifice had worked. Sophie was alive. Alex could finally be with her and be happy. The price was that we would never see each other again. It took a long time for me to calm down. The red cord holding the shattered amulet was still resting quietly in my palm. I decided to live on as this Elena. The seasons changed. Spring turned to fall. Just like that, 3 years went by. I looked up news about Alexander from time to time. The story of my fall into the sea had made major news. Connor and the pack behind him were completely destroyed. Sophie seemed to be okay, and had returned to her own pack. That was for the best. Everything was back on track. I told myself it was time to move on. At first, life without an alpha's scent was torture. Later, I threw myself into work, burying the ache until it became a dull, constant hum. I told myself I was used to it. As long as I didn't think about him, I was a sharp, capable woman. So I decided it was time to find a new mate. A new relationship might finally help me escape his shadow. I had to control my wolf. It couldn't tremble at the sound of his name anymore. I couldn't spend the rest of my life clinging to a life that was over. Ryan was my coworker, a beta. He wasn't bad-looking, and he was a fun guy. I tried. I really did. But it was no fucking good. I couldn't stand the scent of any other alpha, or even a beta. Not after Alexander. I started to think I didn't even like werewolves. Alexander was the only exception. One night, Ryan and I went out for drinks. I was going to set things straight. But he got drunk and ended up pouring his heart out to me instead. I gotta be honest with you, he slurred. The thing is I'm in love with my childhood best friend who's a female alpha. I was stunned. Looks like we were in the same boat. Ryan drank, sobbed and puked. You're hot, and I like your personality. I thought maybe you could help me get over her. But I tried and I can't. I just can't. I love my alpha, and I'm only ever going to love her. He said everything I wanted to say. Because of this weird connection, Ryan and I became good friends. Later, he was stressed about whether to confess to his alpha. My advice was, don't. One wrong move, and you could end up a rogue cast out from your pack. Just like me. Ryan was scared too, so for 3 years he hadn't said a word. He was still diligently trying to cure himself. I didn't think he had a chance. One day he rushed over to my desk. Hey, have you heard? We're getting a new CEO from headquarters. They say he's a super powerful alpha, and totally gorgeous. The department had already run over to get a look. Come on, let's go. The moment we reached the company entrance, a wave of dread washed over me. The receptionist leaned in and whispered to us conspiratorially. This guy is a big deal. I heard he's the son of the old pack alpha. He was the COO at HQ, but then he disappeared for a while. Now he's been sent to our branch to expand the business. Perfect. Time to make a good impression on the new boss. Ryan scoffed next to me. Big deal. Big deal. My alpha is going to inherit her pack's company too. I ignored him, my heart pounding in my chest. After we took our seats, a tall figure walked in. The cheap confetti poppers our manager had insisted on went off with a pop. I looked up. The blood in my veins turned to ice. Across the room, the man's features became clear under the light. He was wearing a heavy black coat, as if it were cut from the night itself, sealing him off from all emotion. Around his neck was a silver chain. The pendant hanging from it was sharp and painfully familiar. It was a little wolf. Alexander. How could it be Alexander? The room started to spin. The department head pulled the string on another popper and announced enthusiastically, "Let's welcome our new CEO, Alpha Alexander." That's when I noticed Sophie wasn't with him. She wasn't here. People around me started whispering. This alpha is so intimidating but so hot. Ryan nudged me. I still think my alpha is more beautiful. I shot him a glare. That's bullshit. My alpha is far more handsome, my inner wolf bristled. Ryan looked baffled by my sudden outburst. Hey, what's your problem? I clapped a hand over his mouth, trying my best to shrink into the background and mask my scent with blockers. Even though this body didn't look much like my old one at first, after 3 years, the resemblance was growing. Thank God I wore a mask today. Alexander had only glanced my way when he came in. He hadn't looked at me since. He definitely didn't recognize me. That night, the department head organized a team dinner to welcome the new CEO. Someone suggested Truth or Dare, that stupid office game. Alexander was already the center of attention, and now as the guest of honor, all eyes were on him. Finally, someone got their chance and asked him a question. Alpha Alexander, do you have a mate? I did. Alexander's 2 quiet words shattered the hopes of more than a few omegas and betas in the room. But some people refused to give up. The next round, the question was for him again. So are you single now? Everyone stared at him, holding their breath. My heart leaped into my throat. Alexander looked up. Maybe it was just me, but his gaze seemed to drift in my direction. No. That was it. All hope was officially dead. If the alpha wasn't single, he probably had someone he was devoted to. Okay, I admit it. Even knowing he would probably move on, it still hurt. Right now, I wished I had actually died. If I had to stay by his side and watch him mark another omega, I would go insane. The party's energy fizzled out after that. A guy sitting next to Alexander seemed to spot something interesting and pointed at his necklace. Alpha Alexander, your pendant is really unique. It's a little wolf. For the first time, some emotion flickered across Alexander's face. He reached up and touched the silver deer at his chest, a soft smile playing on his lips. Yeah, it's to remember a girl. The entire room went silent. The department head was so shocked he sobered up, quickly trying to change the subject. But someone was too drunk to care about the atmosphere. So why a deer? Does it have a special meaning? This time, I felt it for sure. Alexander's eyes were fixed on me. It's because her name is Elena. A cold sweat soaked through my shirt. My coworkers all turned to look at me. What a coincidence. We have an Elena in our department too. Talk about a coincidence. The name isn't super common, you don't hear it that often. Elena, why are you wearing a mask today? I felt like my heart was going to pound its way out of my chest. And Alexander just stared, watching me, as if determined not to miss a single flicker of emotion on my face. I cleared my throat, forcing my voice low. Really, haha, what a coincidence. Trust me, I grew up in the slums. I'm not that lucky. I have pollen allergies today. The woman our CEO is remembering, was she allergic to pollen too? Ryan gave me a confused look. You're allergic to pollen? Since when? I wanted to rip his mouth off. No, Alexander said, his eyes still locked on me. The light in the room flickered, and I couldn't read his expression. But she was a phenomenal liar. Alexander was a ghost that wouldn't leave, though technically, I was the real ghost. Here. If I went to the cafeteria for lunch, he'd sit at the table across from me. If I bought a coffee, he'd get one too, then drink it alone in a corner. It was infuriating. One day, I finally had a day without seeing him. I asked Ryan to go to the barbecue place across the street, ready to pig out. The meat had just hit the grill when Alexander pushed the door open. Ryan was stuffing his face across from me. He glanced up just in time to see me sitting bolt upright. Why aren't you eating? You go ahead. He grinned like an ass. Don't mind if I do. Then he swept the honey sauce and all the grilled meat in front of me onto his plate. A tall shadow fell over our table. A new plate of freshly grilled meat, slathered in honey, was placed in front of me. Eat. I looked up at Alexander. A sudden urge to cry welling up inside me. Gritting my teeth, I grabbed Ryan's arm. Thanks, but my boyfriend can grill for me, I said, forcing a sweet tone. The air froze for a second. Ryan looked up, his mouth still full of meat. He was confused, but a good bestie is a good bestie. In a flash, he understood. He wrapped a possessive arm around my shoulder. Using the most comically deep voice he could muster, he told Alexander, "Hey man, my girl's watching her figure. So thanks, but we're good." Well, I guess he tried his best. Alexander didn't say anything else. He just turned and left the restaurant. I stared at the plate of honey-glazed meat on the table, until his figure disappeared down the street. Ryan sensed something was wrong. His expression turned serious. Is he harassing you? I shook my head, not knowing where to even begin to explain. Don't ask. Just pretend to be my boyfriend for a while, okay? Ryan took his new role very seriously, walking me to and from work every day. Because of this, his opinion of Alexander hit rock bottom. But after that day, Alexander seemed to vanish from my life. I thought maybe he'd finally figured it out. I wasn't his little Omega. His little Omega would never want to make him sad. One evening, Ryan rushed over, his face alight with gossip. I have some major tea. Someone in the group chat just posted that your old pack is in trouble. Apparently, Connor is trying to force Sophie to take him back. I shot up from my chair, startling Ryan. What did you say? I said Connor is trying to get Sophie back. I didn't hear another word he said. The next thing I knew, I was running out the door. No. Impossible. Sophie hated Connor. How could she possibly get back with him? Something was wrong. I couldn't let Sophie get hurt again. I had to find Alexander. He was the only one who could help. The sky was growing dark, threatening rain. I ran to the CEO's office and saw the door was ajar. I was about to knock when I heard voices from inside. It was Sophie. Alexander, I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but Connor is threatening my family. I don't have a choice, my heart clenched. I was about to push the door open. Then another voice spoke. Alexander's. It was calm but with a bone-deep chill. That's your problem. It has nothing to do with me. I heard Sophie start to cry. But get out. I stood frozen, my hands and feet turning to ice. How could he treat Sophie like that? He was supposed to. Just then the office door opened. Sophie ran out, sobbing. The moment she saw me, she froze. She couldn't meet my eyes. She just ducked her head and ran away. I looked at the cold figure inside the office, and a white-hot rage flared up inside me. I stormed in. How could you do that to her? I demanded, not even realizing my voice was shaking. Alexander slowly looked up. A flash of surprise crossed his eyes when he saw it was me, but it was quickly replaced by that dead calm. She suffered so much, and it's all because of you. How could you just stand by and do nothing? I let all my anger and disappointment pour out. He just watched me quietly, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. He waited until I was done before he spoke. Are you standing up for her? He stated, not asked. Or are you just angry that I didn't turn out to be the devoted alpha you imagined? His words struck me dumb. My heart stopped for a second, then started hammering against my ribs, trying to escape. He'd known it was me all along. He started walking toward me, one step at a time. Useless. 2 lifetimes, 2 different bodies, no blood relation to Alexander whatsoever. Yet I was completely pinned by his alpha bloodline. I learned today that even running away is hard. You bite your finger when you're angry. When I bought you barbecue, you froze for a second before pretending to refuse. And you play with your hair when you lie. You did it 3 times when you told me Ryan was your boyfriend. Also, you crinkle your nose when you're scared. Just like you're doing now. Elena, he said, stepping right in front of me and pulling off my mask. How could you ever think I wouldn't recognize you? The thing with Sophie was just an act between us. If I hadn't done that, would you have ever come to me? Okay, I'm a real idiot. Before I could even apologize, Alexander started to laugh. It was a terrifying laugh. A laugh that made my heart pound with fear. Do you hate me? Do you despise me? Why did you pretend you didn't know me? What do I have to do to earn your forgiveness? The questions hit me one after another, making my head spin. But Alexander's voice was calm. So calm it was like he was talking about someone else. But his eyes held a terrifying, frantic darkness. I backed away, step by step, until the cold glass of the window told me there was nowhere left to run. Alexander gave what was probably meant to be a gentle smile. Or do you just want to hit me? Go on, Elena. Hit me. Or maybe you'd prefer something else. Like that new collar you bought. You know, he murmured, his face a mask of desperate pleading. I'll agree to anything you want. I'm better than those other alphas out there. Better for you. No one in this world will ever be closer than we are. I have never loved anyone else. I only love you. So please don't throw me away again. In that moment, only one thought crossed my mind. Alexander, had he gone insane? He was supposed to be the cold, distant moon in the sky, the supreme alpha of the pack. Why would he say things like that? My brain couldn't process it all, but I caught something that didn't fit. A collar. Right. I hadn't bought any collar. Something exploded in my head. All my thoughts shattered into a million pieces. I stared at him in horror. I had only bought one collar in my past life, the one with the little bell. I never got the chance to give it to him. Not before I died. You, Alexander suddenly grabbed my chin, his lips crashing down on mine, silencing the words I couldn't finish. It was a deep, savage kiss, devouring me, yet threaded with a fragile, careful tenderness. The rain pattered against the window pane, and suddenly I realized. So, I wasn't the only one who had been standing in the rain, enduring the cold and the mud. Alexander was just as crazy for me as I was for him. The morning sun cut through the dark room like a knife. When I woke up, there was a heavy weight on top of me. I opened my eyes to Alexander's face inches from mine. My phone screen was lit up. It was already 9. I bolted upright, the sudden movement waking the alpha beside me. He lazily peeled his eyes open and with a long stretch of his arm, easily pulled me back into his embrace, pinning me with an irresistible alpha force. Sleep a little longer, he murmured, his voice husky and impossibly sexy from sleep. Seeing the bite mark I'd left on his arm in my passion last night, my face flushed hot. I am going to be late. Alexander's grip loosened slightly, and I slipped out of bed like an eel, rushing into the bathroom. I heard his low chuckle from behind me. followed by a contented sigh. I don't remember you ever being this passionate about work. In the bathroom mirror, I saw my body was covered in love bites, from my collarbone down to my waist. Looked like I'd be wearing a turtleneck today. Of course, I hadn't let him off easy either. I was sure his strong back was covered in my claw marks. By the time I finally crept out of the bathroom, Alexander was already washed and dressed. He stood by the window, the morning light tracing the perfect lines of his silhouette, making him look like a predator ready to pounce. The heat still hadn't left my face, and my words came out jumbled. I'm heading to work you. Make yourself at home. Alexander, who was putting on his shoes, glanced up at me, a playful smirk on his lips. Together. We're going the same way. The early spring morning still held a chill. Walking down the street, I suddenly felt like I was in a daze, unable to tell what year it was. Alexander was right beside me, and I was right beside him. We were living under the same roof again, breathing the same air. It was as if the painful 3 years, the cold sea, had all been just a nightmare. I couldn't help but lean into him, pressing myself against his arm. He simply stopped, unbuttoned his coat, and pulled me inside, wrapping me completely in his alpha warmth. I've missed this, I said, looking up at him with a goofy grin. He grunted, leaning down to press a kiss to my forehead, but his voice sounded muffled. My alpha felt like a wounded beast, and I was the one who had made him bleed. Last night, as I was drifting off to sleep, I'd heard him ask me again and again, "You won't disappear again, will you, Elena? Promise me." I was about to stand on my tiptoes and soothe him with a kiss. Suddenly, an angry roar came from behind us. A strong force yanked me out of his arms. Both Alexander and I were stunned. We turned to see Ryan. He was standing there like a mother hen protecting her chick, shielding me behind him and glaring daggers at my alpha. "Alexander, I'm warning you, stay away from my girlfriend, or you'll be sorry." Shit. I forgot about him. Alexander froze for a second. Then an expression that was a bizarre mix of annoyed, amused, and hurt crossed his face. "Are you trying to kill me?" he asked, looking down at me, his voice thick with alpha possessiveness. I shook my head like a bobblehead, quickly pushed Ryan aside, and ran to Alexander's side, clinging to his arm. Ryan, this is Alexander. It's a long story." Ryan's eyes went wide, darting back and forth between the two of us. You're not your sister, she's not," he stammered, pointing at me like he'd seen a ghost. "It's a long story. I'll explain later." Alexander stepped forward, pulling me flush against his side as if declaring ownership. "Let's be clear," he said to Ryan, his voice pure ice. "She is my omega. And my mate. Stay away from her." The information overload was too much. Ryan just stood there, petrified. After a long moment, the emotion in his eyes shifted from confusion to shock, and finally, to deep envy. Then he let out a weird yelp and ran off. Alexander rubbed his temples and gave me a weary look. "These are the kinds of friends you make when I'm not around." I wanted to defend Ryan, but I didn't know where to start. I just said lamely, "He's usually pretty normal." I heard my alpha snort. Already taking another man's side, are we? This damn sweet possessiveness. I silently zipped my lips, deciding not to test the limits of an alpha who had just gotten his mate back. Back home, when the quiet of the night enveloped us, I finally leaned against his chest and asked the question that had been haunting me. "How did you find me?" He was silent for a long time before he finally spoke. "After you fell, I started having severe hallucinations," he said, tightening his arms around me as if afraid I'd disappear again. "I kept seeing you walk into my room, but when I tried to hold you, my arms would be full of nothing but your clothes. My parents thought I was losing it, so they took me to the moon goddess's sanctuary." His voice was soft, but laced with endless fear. "There I saw our past life." My body went stiff. He looked down at me, his eyes filled with pain. "I saw how you sacrificed your soul at the foot of the moon goddess's statue for me, and I saw how I pushed you away with my own hands." "I'm sorry, Alexander," tears streamed down my face. "I was so scared back then. I was terrified that as long as I was by your side, I'd bring you down with me, that I'd get you killed." He pressed his fingers to my lips. But what's the point of living if I don't have you? He said softly. You felt the same way, didn't you? He placed a soothing kiss on my forehead. The goddess's prophecy said, the soul is not extinguished, the bond remains. She told me you weren't dead. So I never stopped looking. Then one day, I was doing charity work in the slums where you grew up. I met a man, Ryan's stepbrother. He was complaining about his beta stepbrother who was always muttering about his alpha crush in his sleep. He showed me a picture of them. His fingers gently stroked my cheek. You were standing right next to him. How could I ever not recognize you? I was floored. It really is a small world. But if he knew about our past life, does that mean you saw everything from our past life? I shot up, trying to cover his eyes. No, you have to forget that. Caught my flailing hands and finally let out a genuine laugh, the darkness in his eyes seeming to lift. I'll never forget, he said, pulling me back into his arms and holding me tight. But you never had to live a lifetime without me. My tears started flowing all over again. He kissed them away one by one, his eyes crinkling at the corners, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. So this time, you're growing old with me, and I'm going to be there every single day to watch you do it.